The night was colder than anyone could bear. Snow howled through the forest, and in a tiny wooden cabin, a little girl pressed her hands against the frosted glass. That's when she saw them. 2 tiny puppies collapsing in the snow, half buried, barely alive. She ran outside, scooped them up, and whispered, "Don't worry, I'll protect you." She thought she had saved their lives, but she had no idea what she had just brought into her home. Because when dawn broke, flashing sirens cut through the silence. Police cars surrounded her cabin, officers pounding on the door, demanding answers. Why were officers desperate to find the dogs, and what secret were these helpless puppies carrying? Stay with us, this story will shock you. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. Snow covered everything in sight, turning the world into a silent white ocean. The little girl, Emily, lived on the outskirts of a quiet mountain village with her grandmother. Their wooden cabin stood alone among tall pine trees, smoke rising weakly from its chimney. It was a place where winters were long, power cuts were common, and warmth came not from luxury but from love. That morning the blizzard hadn't stopped for days and the roads were completely buried. Most families had locked their doors and stayed close to their fireplaces. But Emily had always been different. Curious, brave, and full of compassion far beyond her years. Her grandmother had gone to bed early, leaving Emily to watch the fire and keep it alive through the night. Wrapped in a red blanket, she sat by the window, tracing tiny hearts on the frosted glass. The flickering firelight painted her face in gold and orange, but her gaze was distant, lonely. Her parents had passed away when she was just 5, leaving her in her grandmother's care. Since then, the silence of winter nights always made her heart ache. She often wished for someone or something to share it with. Then came the faint sound that changed everything. A soft, pitiful whimper cut through the howling wind outside. Emily froze. She pressed her ear to the glass, holding her breath. Again the sound, a cry. Desperate, weak, and close. Her heart raced. Without hesitation, she grabbed her thick red coat, slipped on her snow boots, and opened the cabin door. A rush of icy wind slammed against her, making her eyes water instantly. She stepped into the storm, snow crunching under her small boots. "Hello?" she called, her voice trembling in the cold air. At first there was nothing. Then movement. 2 small shadows near the wooden bench outside. She rushed closer, gasping as her flashlight beam revealed 2 tiny German Shepherd puppies shaking uncontrollably, their paws buried in ice. Their eyes met hers. Pleading, innocent, terrified. Emily knelt beside them, her hands trembling as she wrapped her scarf around their fragile bodies. "It's okay. You're safe now," she whispered, her breath fogging in the air. She didn't know it yet, but saving them that night would change everything by dawn. Emily pushed open the cabin door with her shoulder, cradling the 2 freezing puppies against her chest. The warmth from the fireplace hit her face, but it was the faint heartbeat beneath her hands that made her hurry. "Grandma!" she called softly, but the old woman was still asleep in her room. The little girl laid the puppies gently beside the fire, wrapping them in an old woolen blanket. Their tiny bodies trembled as if fighting for life itself. She rushed to the kitchen, poured some warm milk into a bowl, and returned, kneeling beside them. One puppy was barely breathing. The other lifted its head weakly, licking her finger as if to say thank you. Tears welled in Emily's eyes. "Please don't die," she whispered, stroking their tiny paws. She had never seen creatures so helpless and yet so determined to live. Minutes turned into hours. Emily stayed awake all night, feeding them drops of milk with a spoon, rubbing their fur gently to restore warmth. Slowly, one of the puppies gave a faint whine, a small sound that filled the cabin with hope. Emily smiled through her tears. "You're going to be okay. I promise." Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows, but inside, a miracle was unfolding. The puppies began to move, curling closer to each other, their breathing steadying. For the first time, Emily felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the fire. It was something deeper. Something she hadn't felt since her parents were alive. She named them Shadow and Luna, one for his dark fur, the other for the white patch on her chest that shone like the moon. They looked up at her with trusting eyes, their tiny tails twitching. Emily giggled softly, feeling an unexplainable connection. Before heading to bed, she whispered, "You're safe now. I'll take care of you." She didn't notice the small tag tangled in Luna's fur, or the strange symbol etched on it. Under the flicker of the firelight, it glimmered faintly, unnoticed. Outside, the storm began to calm, but far in the distance, flashing lights appeared on the snowy road, police vehicles heading toward the forest. Morning light spilled softly through the frosted windows, painting the cabin in shades of gold and silver. Emily rubbed her sleepy eyes and turned toward the fireplace. The puppies were awake now, huddled together beneath the blanket, their tiny noses twitching as they sniffed the air. She smiled, her heart swelling with joy. "Good morning, sleepyheads," she whispered, setting a bowl of warm milk on the floor. Both wagged their tails weakly before lapping it up eagerly. But her grandmother wasn't pleased when she awoke. "Emily," she scolded gently, "you can't just bring animals in from the cold like that. They might be sick or belong to someone else." Emily's face fell, but she shook her head firmly. "They were dying, Grandma. I couldn't leave them out there." Her voice trembled, but her eyes held determination beyond her years. The old woman sighed, looking at the puppies now curled up beside the hearth. "Just for today," she murmured, "until we can find out who they belong to." But Emily's mind was already made up. She had lost too much in her short life to abandon something in need again. Throughout the day, she nursed the puppies, brushing their damp fur and whispering stories to them. When she wrapped them in her red scarf again that evening, she noticed something strange. The small metal tag caught in Luna's fur had a deep scratch across it, almost like it had been ripped off quickly. A faint symbol was engraved, a number and a mark she couldn't understand. Curiosity flickered in her mind, but she pushed it aside. What mattered most was keeping them safe. She tucked them close beside her as night fell once again, whispering, "No one's taking you away." Outside, the snow began to fall harder. And deep in the forest, someone else was looking for those puppies. That night, the cabin glowed softly from the fire crackling in the hearth. Emily lay on a thick rug with Shadow and Luna curled against her chest, their tiny bodies finally warm and breathing evenly. She stroked their fur gently, listening to the steady rhythm of their breaths. For the first time in many winters, the little cabin didn't feel so empty. The silence was filled with soft whimpers, playful nudges, and the comfort of companionship. Her grandmother sat in her rocking chair, knitting quietly, though her eyes often drifted toward the puppies with worry. "Emily," she murmured, "sometimes taking in strays brings more trouble than comfort." But Emily only hugged them closer, whispering, "They needed me." That's all that matters. Hours passed. The storm outside grew stronger, the wind whistling against the windows like a ghostly song. The wood creaked, the shutters rattled, and the fire hissed as snow seeped through small cracks. Emily pulled the blanket higher, but suddenly, the dogs stiffened. Shadow raised his head, ears pricking. Luna whimpered softly, her tiny body trembling. Emily sat up, her heartbeat quickening. "What is it?" she whispered. The puppy's eyes darted toward the door, their little growls barely audible. A low, strange sound echoed outside, the crunch of heavy footsteps in the snow. She held her breath. Was it just the storm playing tricks? Or was someone out there? Slowly the noise faded, swallowed by the howling wind. Still, Emily couldn't shake the chill creeping down her spine. She pulled the puppies even closer, whispering, "Don't worry, I'll protect you." Sleep came slowly that night, broken by the distant sound of engines rumbling in the dark forest roads. Neither Emily nor her grandmother knew it yet, but the little cabin was no longer hidden in peace. By morning, everything would change. The first light of dawn crept over the forest, turning the snow into a glittering sea of white. Emily stirred awake, the warmth of Shadow and Luna pressed against her side. She yawned, rubbing her sleepy eyes, and for a moment everything felt calm and perfect. The puppies wagged their little tails as if greeting her good morning. She giggled softly and kissed the top of their heads, but the peace didn't last. A faint hum broke the silence. At first Emily thought it was the wind again, but no, it was different. Louder, mechanical. The sound grew steadily until the walls of the cabin trembled faintly. Her grandmother stepped to the window, pulling the curtain aside, and gasped. "Emily," she whispered, her voice tense, "stay away from the window." Emily, curiosity burning in her chest, peeked anyway. Her eyes widened in shock. Outside, the snow-covered road that had been empty the night before was now crowded with flashing lights. Police cars, At least half a dozen. Their tires crunched against the ice as officers in heavy coats stepped out, their breath steaming in the freezing air. Some carried radios, others moved with urgency, scanning the area as if searching for something or someone. Her heart thudded. Why were they here? In their tiny, forgotten corner of the woods, police never came. She clutched the puppies instinctively, pressing their warm bodies against her chest. Shadow gave a faint growl while Luna whimpered. Her grandmother's face paled. "Don't move, Emily," she said firmly. But it was too late. The sound of boots stomping against the porch filled the cabin. A sharp knock thundered against the door. "Open up. This is the police." A voice boomed, muffled but commanding. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She looked at her grandmother, who hesitated before slowly reaching for the door handle. The puppy squirmed in Emily's arms, sensing the tension in the air. The door swung open and cold air rushed inside. Two officers stood in the doorway, their expressions stern, their eyes scanning the small cabin quickly before locking onto Emily and the blanket in her arms. "We need to ask some questions," one of them said gravely. "It's about those dogs." Emily's heart sank. Somehow she already knew. This was no ordinary visit. The cabin felt smaller with the officers inside, their heavy boots stamping snow onto the wooden floor. Emily clutched Shadow and Luna tighter, her arms wrapping around them protectively. The taller officer crouched slightly to meet her eyes, his voice calm but firm. "Sweetheart, where did you find those dogs?" Emily hesitated, her throat dry. She glanced at her grandmother, who nodded gently, urging her to speak. I found them outside last night. They were freezing. I couldn't just leave them." Her words came out in a whisper, trembling with fear and honesty. The officer exchanged a look with his partner. The second man pulled out a small notepad and began scribbling. "Did you notice anything unusual? A collar, a tag, anything at all?" he asked. Emily blinked, her mind racing. She remembered the strange metal tag tangled in Luna's fur, the one with a symbol she didn't understand. Slowly, she reached into the blanket and pulled it out, placing it hesitantly in the officer's gloved hand. The man's face hardened instantly. He studied the mark, then muttered under his breath, "It's them." "What does that mean?" her grandmother demanded, her voice sharp with worry. The taller officer straightened, his expression grim. "These aren't ordinary strays. They belong to someone very dangerous. We've been tracking a smuggling ring that uses dogs as carriers." His voice dropped lower, heavy with implication. "These two were missing since last week. We feared the worst." Emily's eyes widened, and she hugged Shadow and Luna even closer. "They're not bad," she cried. "They're just babies. They needed me." The officer's stern expression softened for a moment, but his partner shook his head. "We need to take them in. For evidence. For safety." Emily's heart broke. She shook her head furiously, tears streaming down her cheeks. "No, you can't take them. They'll die without me." The cabin fell silent, the crackling fire the only sound. The officers stood torn, caught between duty and the desperate plea of a little girl. Finally, the taller one sighed. "We won't take them. Not yet. But you need to tell us everything. Because, Emily, these dogs may have led danger straight to your door." The words sent a chill deeper than the winter cold. The room seemed to tighten around Emily as the officer's words echoed in her ears. Danger. Smuggling ring, evidence. She held Shadow and Luna so close she could feel their tiny hearts racing against her chest. Her grandmother's face was pale, her knitting needles lying forgotten on the floor. The taller officer knelt down again, his tone softer now. "Emily, listen carefully. These puppies aren't just lost. They were taken from a secret location where criminals were hiding something. Dogs like these, they've been trained, but not for good purposes." Emily shook her head violently, tears spilling over. "No, they're not dangerous. They're just scared. They only wanted to be warm." Her small voice cracked, but her arms never loosened around the puppies. The second officer laid the metal tag on the table. In the firelight, the strange symbol etched into it became clear, an insignia linked to a criminal network notorious for using animals to transport illegal goods across borders. "This mark proves it," he said grimly. "We've been after them for months. These dogs are the key." Her grandmother covered her mouth in shock. "You mean they were being used?" "Yes," the officer replied firmly. "We think these two escaped during the storm. But if they found their way here, it means those men are still close by, and they'll come looking." Emily's stomach twisted with fear. She looked at Shadow and Luna, who whimpered softly as if sensing her distress. They weren't villains, they were victims. She brushed her cheek against their fur, whispering, "You're safe now. I won't let them take you back." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. The taller one sighed, rubbing his temple. "We don't want to hurt them, Emily. In fact, by finding them, you may have just saved lives. But you must be brave. We'll need your help." Her breath caught. "My help?" "Yes," he said. "These dogs might lead us to the people we've been chasing. But until then, they have to stay hidden, and so do you." The fire popped loudly in the silence that followed. Emily clutched the puppies tighter, her heart torn between fear and determination. She had found them in the snow, nearly lifeless. Now they weren't just strays. They were the center of a dangerous secret. And outside, in the endless white forest, shadows were already moving closer. The hours that followed were tense. The police stationed cars along the road and men outside the cabin, their radios crackling in the icy air. Inside, Emily sat by the fire, Shadow and Luna curled tightly in her lap. Their tiny breaths warmed her hands, and she whispered promises only they could hear. "No one will hurt you again. I'll protect you. Always." Her grandmother placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You have such a brave heart, Emily," she murmured, her eyes glistening. "But sometimes bravery means letting others help too." Emily nodded, though her arms never loosened. Suddenly, a radio squawked. One officer's face hardened as he pressed it to his ear. "Movement in the forest," he announced. "We've got company." Emily's heart pounded as footsteps echoed outside. The dogs stiffened, their ears pricking. Then a bark. Shadow leapt from her lap, running to the door. Luna followed, growling with surprising fierceness. Through the window, Emily caught a glimpse of dark figures moving between the trees, their shapes shadowy against the snow. The police reacted swiftly, storming into the night with flashlights and weapons drawn. Shouts rang out, followed by the crunch of boots and the distant hum of engines. Emily pressed her face against the glass, fear and hope colliding in her chest. Minutes felt like hours, but at last, silence returned. One by one, the officers reappeared, dragging two handcuffed men through the snow. The taller officer looked at Emily, his breath heavy, but a small smile tugging at his lips. "It's over," he said firmly. "They won't hurt anyone again." Relief washed over the cabin like warmth from the fire. Emily dropped to her knees as Shadow and Luna bounded back into her arms, tails wagging furiously. She laughed through her tears, kissing their cold noses. The officer crouched beside her. "You did something extraordinary, Emily. Without you, we might never have found them. Those dogs, they're safe because of you." Her chest swelled with pride. For the first time since her parents were gone, she felt truly needed, truly strong. She hugged the puppies tighter, whispering, "We saved each other." And in that quiet cabin, surrounded by snow and starlight, 3 lives, 1 little girl and 2 fragile souls, had found a new beginning. The cabin settled into silence once more, the storm easing into gentle flakes that drifted past the window. The police cars eventually rolled away, their flashing lights fading into the forest. Emily sat by the fire, her arms around Shadow and Luna, the 3 of them bound by a bond that felt unbreakable. Her grandmother rocked quietly in her chair, her gaze softening as she watched her granddaughter's smile return, a smile she hadn't seen in years. The taller officer lingered a moment before leaving. He crouched by Emily, his voice kind. "You've got a heart stronger than most adults I know. Don't ever lose that." He gave Shadow and Luna a final pat, then stepped out into the snowy dawn. Emily looked down at the puppies, their tiny eyes closing as they drifted to sleep. She whispered gently, "You're home now. No one will ever take you away." For the first time, she felt something deeper than loneliness. She felt purpose. The fire crackled, the world outside finally calm. The danger had passed, but Emily's act of kindness had changed everything. What began as a rescue in the snow had ended as a story of courage, love, and the unbreakable connection between a child and her dogs. And as Shadow stirred and nestled closer to her, Emily realized the truth: she hadn't just saved them. They had saved her too.